recorded. All right, I will go ahead and start off with an introduction. If you don't know who I am just to clarify what I'm looking like for deafblind, I am a white female wearing a black shirt. My name is Christina Boyer Davis. I go by Chrissy. And I am the director of Knoxville Center of the Deaf, as well as a facilitator for the Tennessee Licensure Work Group. And I'm honored to be here to lead you all through this session for this evening. So welcome. We are so excited to have all of you here at this statewide virtual meeting here regarding licensure. So before we really get started, we kind of just want to go over some procedures and protocols so that everyone is understanding how this will work. So thank you so much for taking the time to join this important meeting. Before I really get into the specifics, I want to just kind of talk about who's involved. And just so you all are aware, there's 106 people who have signed up, 37 of which are deaf, 78 of which are hearing interpreters who are all here tonight. So it's quite a diverse group, and we're really excited about that. I would like to share a little bit of background about what licensure is, just to kind of clarify. Prior to COVID and prior to the pandemic, we did set up a licensure meeting for the community interpreters as well as educational interpreters. The community interpreter licensure did get put on hold. However, the educational interpreter licensure did get passed through the Department of Education. So the community licensure was put on hold, and just this past summer of 2023, we all kind of started to get together again to talk about that licensure conversation. So we did set up and establish a licensure work group. So that licensure work group encompasses 10 deaf and hard of hearing, as well as 10 hearing interpreters. And this is something that we meet monthly. There have been various, we have also had various meetings throughout the state of Tennessee, and this would be the last session for the first round of those meetings that we're hosting for the public. So this is a very similar session to what has been hosted around the state. We'll also have a second round this coming spring to continue this conversation with you all. I do want to start with emphasizing that the work group that we have is in collaboration with all of you. The decision is not made overnight. This is quite a long process that will take some time. Your thoughts, concerns, feedback will be brought into our work group that we can use that throughout as we proceed. To make sure that this meeting is productive and successful, we do have some ground rules. Most importantly this is a respectful space, and we want to make sure that communication is clear. We do have a chat. However, it is limited only to be able to send messages to the host, which is Christy. Please also keep your cameras off during the duration of the meeting until we get to the end session, where there will be a question and answer time, and make sure that you're raising your hand for those questions. We will have 7 topics that we'll discuss. We will ask you to raise your hand and we will call on you. And this would really only be for clarifying questions, and it has to be specific to the topic that we are currently discussing. It cannot be off topic. After those topics and questions are complete, we will then have a Jamboard, which will give you all time to have a Post-it note. You will see on the side of your screen that there's a Post-it note, and you will be able to type it in what you're saying, and then we will basically save those Post-it notes and bring them to our meetings in the future. During the question and answer time at the end, there will be time we will allow time as long as we do not run out of time for the session. We might not be able to get to all questions and answers. However, we will try our best, but please make sure that you raise your hand and wait for us to spotlight you. We will only allow a limited time, possibly 1 to 2 minutes. However, if if we run out of time at the end of the session, please go ahead and just type in your question in the chat and we will save that for a later date. As a reminder, we are using American Sign Language as the primary language, so we do have an interpreter for support as needed. This meeting will be recorded and we will store that on YouTube. And this will be public information for all of you to view at a later date. So now I would like to introduce our 2 presenters for the evening. We have Megan Wiley-Potts. She is an interpreter as well as the Tennessee Registry of Interpreter for the Deaf Secretary, as well as Eric Workman. He is an interpreter as well as the representative for Bridges for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing in Nashville. So they will be leading the next 7 topics and questions, as well as the Q&A time. If you need any support, please, or any tech problems for support, please go ahead and send a message over to Christy. She is our tech support person, and we will be monitoring to make sure that we're helping you throughout this session. All right, we are ready. Let's get started.
All right, thank you, Christy. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining tonight. We really do appreciate that you took your time out of your busy schedule to come here for this important topic. So today we will be sharing, I will be sharing my screen with you so that way you can see the slides that we have prepared. Good. Okay, so now that you all can see my screen, here are the slides that we prepared. This is the first one. Hold on one second.
Hold on.
We have a technical problem. 1 second. What happened? I don't know. Hold on. We lost our screen. Hold on 1 second. Here, Mom, right.
Okay, but we just lost.
Oh my gosh.
So sorry, 1 moment.
Get this. There we go. We're back. Okay. Yay, sorry. Okay. Woo. So, as you can see, we've had meetings up until now all over the state of Tennessee. And as Chrissy mentioned, this is the final one of the first round, and we're holding this statewide via Zoom. We are thrilled that so many people has registered to be here tonight, so thank you for that. As Christy just mentioned, she went through the ground rules that we will be upholding tonight. And so our first question of the evening will cover number 1. And if you've come to any of the meetings so far, you have seen this is the same format that we've used. So we'll talk about questions. Eric and I will go over the meetings. I know that he will add some comments to that as well. And the first one we'll go over is interpreter certification. I know that many of you are interpreters in this room, so I know that you're well aware of what certification means. So I would like to go ahead and explain that though, for those who don't. The 3 certifications that we will discuss tonight is the RID, Registry of Interpreters of the Deaf, the NAD, National Association of the Deaf, and BEI. So RID certification, Registry of Interpreters of the Deaf, That one is national. It's a national certification. It is accepted all over the United States, nationwide. And that's just proof that the interpreters have an expected skill set. NAD, that's also for National Association of the Deaf. That's also nationwide. It's recognized all over the United States as well. And then BEI, that is the Board for Evaluation of Interpreters. That was established in Texas, and now it is being used in several states all over the United States, and it's being accepted more and more for qualification of interpreter skills. If you'll notice that RID and NAD, they're both nationwide. However, BEI is semi-nationwide, meaning not accepted in all states. As of yet. But understand all three of those are certifications. So, Eric, do you have anything that you would like to add? Nope. I'm good.
No, I'm okay. Actually, maybe I will go ahead and add something. So there is also something called the EIPA, and that is something that is separate and not considered a certification. It is not recognized as a certification. It is more considered a credential. So the state of Tennessee has already voted and passed a law previously that is related to educational interpreters. And I just want to clarify that that is not related to this topic for tonight. If there is a licensure that we are discussing tonight, that will be considered licensure for community interpreters only.
Yes, and we do want to add that EIPA credential, yes, that's an assessment, not a certification. So that is something that is separate and that it's focused primarily on a different topic. On education, whereas, you know, RID has many different certification over the years, many different names of those certifications, and then NAD, they have levels, so it's 1 through 5, what their levels are, and then BEI is also, they have different levels. They have novice, they have
Up to advanced.
aptitude, and then advanced, or up to advanced. And so we'll elaborate a little bit more on each of those to help you understand what those certifications mean and what's important to remember about those. Mainly that they are either national or semi-national certifications. So if there's nothing else to add there, then I think that we are able to pull some stuff up into chat. Or I'm sorry, we're gonna post a link into chat for the Jamboard for you guys to be able to comment there. Christy is going to copy and paste that link into the chat. All you have to do is then click on that and pull it up, and we will be able to see a whiteboard pop up over on the side. They should have like a gray area that has a menu on it. You click on that menu, it kind of looks like a Post-it note, and then go from there. So now we'll leave about 5 minutes for you to type any question, comments, or concerns into that Jamboard, and I will unshare my screen at that time, and Christy will share her screen so we can see what your comments are. Interpreters are okay. keep them coming. Please continue to comment. We really appreciate seeing all the comments that you've put on there so far. We have about 2 minutes. All right, we're gonna wrap this part up. Okay, so one person had text and chat and asked if we could zoom in a little bit to make it a little bigger to be able to read them. The Post-its are a little small, but you can click and drag them to make them bigger. Or to zoom in and out.
Zoom can move.
So if you need to move zoom in and out, you can do that, but you can make it bigger to be able to see it. Now we're gonna go ahead and share number 2. Okay, you can see my screen. So Tennessee interpreter licensure, what exactly does that mean? So it's important to understand that certification and licensure are different. They are separate. Remember that certification, there are 3 national and semi-national certifications. But in Tennessee, the licensure is very specific. It is just for the state of Tennessee. Now, interpreters who are certified, they will be able to, we will help them earn their licensure, but it is separate. It is not parallel. So here in Tennessee, there is no requirement for certification. You are able to work. In the future, if the bill is passed and approved, the licensure is what will be required. So in order to work in the state of Tennessee, you will need the licensure. And the reason we're doing this is to protect the deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing, deaf disabled communities. And for latent deaf communities, so that we can make sure to bring the interpreter profession to a higher skill set. Now, again, the licensure and certification do not mean the same thing. All over the United States, there are states that have already developed and implemented a licensure, such as Kentucky, Alabama, North Carolina, and several other states that have a licensure already in place. Tennessee, however, if this is passed and approved, will specifically be for people who live in the state of Tennessee and meet their needs. Eric, is there anything you would like to add?
No, this would be just something similar as other professions such as lawyers. They're not able to work all over the US. They must apply and have the specific skill set validated by the state licensure. So someone on the state board would oversee that and approve that licensure to permit them to work for various states. So that is something similar to consider.
Exactly, yes. Many other professions, nail salons, lawyers, hairdressers. My husband is a nurse and he's required to have state licensure in the state that he's practicing in as well. So now it's your turn. We'd like to hear from you again. If you don't mind typing, what your thoughts are on the licensure and what that means. I will stop sharing my screen and Christy will then share the Jamboard. We'll give you 5 minutes again. Questions are great. I appreciate that. If there are questions about cost, time, things like that, we can hold those off for the Q&A, but let's keep these questions about the licensure itself. This is your 2-minute warning. All right, time's up. Gonna take that off and go ahead and share my screen again. I can't see the interpreters, but they're still there. Yes, here we are. Good. Okay, good, good, okay. So number 3, will be pretty brief. It's just wanting to explain the difference between number 1 and number 2, certification and licensure. Now, which we have already done. So I'm just going to give you 5 minutes to talk about what the difference between certification and licensure looks like. So I'll unshare my screen. Two-minute warning. These are great comments, you guys. Wonderful. I'll go ahead and take that down. And now I'll share my screen again. And then I'm gonna let Eric take a turn.
So if you'd like to go ahead and read the slide yourselves. So the answer is we hope so. Again, just to clarify, the point of licensure is that interpreters already have the skill set to provide effective communication to the deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing, late deafened, and various communities that we provide services to. The licensure would be that the committee would discuss all of the specifics and requirements. However, that has not been done yet, and we don't know what that decision is, and we don't know what that will look like. So if an interpreter is not yet certified, we're not saying that you might not be able to work, or you possibly could, you possibly couldn't. We still have not had that discussion at this point, which is part of this meeting, to get your concerns out there, your worries, your feedback, anything that you might feel, if you support it or are against this. This is a neutral meeting for us to gather information. The answer to this question is very ambiguous at this point, and really it depends. Our goal is that we hope that most interpreters can continue to work. Megan, any comments?
Yeah, it's important to emphasize that we want to keep qualified, skilled interpreters. The people that are already in the profession who we love and care for, we would love to keep those. We are just trying to recognize the ones that do not have the skills, qualifications, or ethics. You know, we know both sets of interpreters could cause harm, but our goal in this is to minimize harm that interpreters cause. Now, we really value our interpreters, our qualified, skilled interpreters, and we want to keep them in this profession the best that we can here in Tennessee.
Also, I'd just also like to say that I have seen many interpreters and I have assessed many interpreters. And I think that all of us can agree in that certification does not always mean that interpreters are perfectly skilled in every field or every situation. Some interpreters might not be the best, whereas other interpreters might take the test over and over again and fail it multiple times. However, they are quite a skilled interpreter. So what we want to talk about is qualification, because that is what we want to focus on. So the committee is focused on qualification and what that means for the state of Tennessee, not Kentucky, not Alabama, or other states. We want to consider the deaf, deafblind, hard of hearing communities in the state of Tennessee to accommodate your needs and focus on your needs specifically to provide services that you need in the state of Tennessee.
Yes. Okay, so once again, we will allow Christy to take over and share the Jamboard. We'll give you about 5 minutes. We've got 2 more minutes. All right. So recently Eric mentioned that we have a licensure work group and we are still discussing a lot of avenues for the licensure. And we have not yet decided what this is going to look like. We're still listening and having conversations with people in the community every day, like we are with you guys right now, having this discussion. So our goal is for the cost of the licensure to be affordable. We do not want it to be super expensive like RIDs. We know that the cost is a barrier to certification. Often it is. And so our goal is to keep this process as affordable as possible. Also, I would like to add that the time frame that we're looking at, whether it be 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, we don't know. We want to add that into consideration too. So when we open it up and listen to, we want to be able to open up and listen to everybody's comments. Eric, anything you'd like to add?
Nope, I think that's it.
Okay, so once again, I'm going to turn this over to Christy and allow her to run the Jamboard. We'll give you 5 minutes. We have 2 more minutes to go. Great, we'll wrap that up. So now we can move on to number 6. If you don't mind, I will turn that over to Eric to discuss.
All right, this is the last one before everyone can share their comments. So if you don't mind, just go ahead and read that slide yourselves. So people were wondering if there's an interpreter licensure, will that cause the interpreter shortage to become worse? So that is what this question is regarding. The answer to that is possibly. However, we have talked with some friends who are interpreters themselves who live in states that are bordering Tennessee. And they have told me that when licensure first was passed in that state, the interpreter numbers did go down. Not completely dwindled, but they did decline a bit. Well, the goal of our licensure here is to have a temporary, is not for temporary. This is a long-term solution. So we want to improve the state of Tennessee. That means that every once in a while or at the beginning of this, we might have a shortage, and then after that, we will see some more success. So again, we might have a small shortage at the beginning, and then over time, as people move to the state of Tennessee, hopefully that number will increase and build again. So that is one big concern that people seem to have. They're nervous about the rural communities in Tennessee, or maybe someone has a favorite interpreter who is not currently certified. Will they still be able to interpret for them? Those are the concerns that we will be addressing during our work meetings. We will be addressing all of your concerns. And as soon as this is finished, again, we will turn it over for your questions, comments, and concerns as well. And we just want you to understand that the licensure work group does understand all of your concerns, and we feel them as well. If that shortage does happen, we hope it does not. However, we feel that it will only happen at a temporary time. Megan?
You know, remember when we started talking about the certification? RED is not the only certification. It has opened up to not only just focus on that certification. And we're hoping that if this does decrease our load of interpreters, it's not going to be serious enough to affect it. The population. So, you know, we have seen how it's worked in other states, and we can learn from their decrease in interpreters to learn from them and improve their methods in order to keep our numbers here in Tennessee at an adequate level. So again, we'll pull up the Jamboard and get going. 2 minutes. All right, are we finished? So now we'll continue to the final question. What do you think? I mean, there's not a lot to discuss for this slide, so I think we'll just go ahead. Before I turn it over to you, Eric, is there anything you'd like to mention?
Just again, for this comment, when this is over, we will have some turn taking for you all to raise your hands, ask your questions and get your answers. So we will have more time to deep dive into that chat. But for right now, we'll just use the Jamboard and you all can post your short comments.
Go ahead, Christy. 2 minutes. All right, we're done with that. Okay. Are we ready? Okay, thank you guys for putting all of your thoughts. I really appreciate you helping our group to really process through this and work together for the future. So next we have Q&A, and I see we have about 4 or 5 minutes left, 45 minutes left. So what we'll do is we'll have questions. First, remember, we're going to be respectful and communicate clearly with each other. Please use the raise hand icon so that we can spotlight you, so that the interpreters have a chance to see you clearly if you are signing, so they can voice for the people who aren't fluent in ASL. So Christy will recognize your raise hand icon and spotlight you. And then once you're set up, we're ready to go. I'm so excited to get this ball rolling. Let's go.
Can I go ahead with my comment? Okay. So my name is Jade, and I am a white female with a black shirt with a white background. I just wanted to share some various perceptions and perspectives here. So for example, if we decided to vote for President of America, just like we do, for example, the president still has to go through signing of an oath, an inauguration before they can actually take on the presidency. So this would be something to consider for the interpreter licensure. For example, as a doctor, they would also have to do a similar concept. They go through the Hippocratic Oath before that they are able to actually become a certified doctor. So that is their promise. And that is something that we can consider for the deaf community, as well as the deaf, blind, and hard of hearing community. That is a commitment to go through that certification and licensure process. So that's something that we can look at as a possibility for qualification. And that's just something I'd like to throw out there. And so that's just a consideration I'd have. Thank you for your time.
I see a few more. So Chris, if you don't mind just going to the next person. I need the camera on for a spotlight on for me. Or I'm sorry.
Their camera on.
Oh, I need their camera on. If you raise your hand, go ahead and have your camera ready, so Christy is ready to spotlight you. Okay, there we go, now we can see Sharon. Okay, great, perfect, okay. I know that we mentioned accountability and effective communication and how important that is, that we need to meet those standards. Secondly, I did have a question about the balance with remote interpreting versus live in-person interpreting, how that will be addressed. And, just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you. Yes, thank you. We'll put down that for later discussion. Okay, camera off, good. And now we'll go to the next person. 1 second, there we go.
All right, I'll go ahead and start. My name is John, and I have seen some of the answers, but I was having a hard time myself writing them. So I wanted to just kind of hop on here and just say that I am in strong support of licensure for the interpreters. This is going to protect this will protect us for legal reasons and for liability reasons. For misdiagnosis and all different reasons that happen within the community. So for example, an eye doctor appointment or a dentist, all of them are required to have licenses. So it's important that interpreters in this profession also have license. So I completely support this above and beyond anything else.
Very good. Thank you, John. Next person. Can you see me? Are we good? We're good to go. All right. So I just have two quick points. First of all, I want to follow up with the other deaf comments in support for this licensure. I agree with you all. I am really happy about this as well. Secondly, I forgot now. I'm sorry. Well, I'll be back. See you later. Oh, I remembered now. Can I come back? Wait a minute. Okay, now go ahead. Okay, just want to throw this out there. Just for clarification of the difference between a licensure, a rough draft, a legal rough draft for the bill, if passed, then becomes law. So once it's passed, it is set in stone. Typically, broad terminology, that's typically broad terminology. The details like cost, time, and those specific things will go in the regulations that are under the licensure that go under the board. So they don't overlap. And so that's why the committee is working together for clarification on many different things, just for your benefit to know the difference with that. Thank you.
I'll pull up the next person.
Kat, we can't see you.
Just saw you pop up and then you popped back down.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Sorry about that. A little slow here. Okay, so I just wanted to clarify, I am a certified interpreter. And you can see my name there. So I typically work virtually mostly, probably 98% of the time. And I strongly am in support of the licensure. I have multiple state licenses, probably around 12 at this point, and I have seen all different types. So this meeting I'm really excited about because prior to this, when I lived in Nashville, the discussion did not address all of these various things. So I'm happy to hear, first off, that it is a statewide licensure a discussion that we're having about this licensure. My concern is that people who are not yet certified by NAD, RAD, BEI, any of the 3 certifications, if they currently don't have those, they might be scared and run off to another state that does not require licensure. So my hope is that Tennessee will partner and support the various bordering states to see what they have and figure out what they have and pick and choose from that to make sure that the bordering states or the bordering states that do not yet have licensure, we can encourage them to also follow suit. So some states do accept reciprocity and other states do not. And so I am in support of whatever each state decides. However, there are interpreters who are skilled and who are certified, but I'm hoping that this really helps develop, excuse me, this will help, the people who are involved will develop that licensure and will include all of those other states' considerations for provisionals and endorsements for medical, legal, or other niches. And possibly having those separately and also making sure that the licensure does not cost us $200, $300 annually. So how do we get involved in developing that, and who is involved in developing that? Who would be on the board that's overseeing it? So who will actually be housing the licensure? Is that DHS or VR, or would that be under something completely separate, not relating to social services at all? Would that be just a complete license board that is separate? So who is involved in that, and what would that look like, and where is the money going? And whenever they have that money, where will that encourage other people to get certified to become licensed? So just trying to figure out all of these specifics. I have a lot going on in my head, and I know I only have a couple minutes, so I'll stop now, but thank you so much. I can say, yeah.
No, I just want to say thank you for all of that feedback. That gives us a lot of stuff to consider when we meet with the committee again. The bordering states, there are a few of them that are in this group now that are watching and wanting to see what this looks like. And
I'm one of them.
yeah, so that's great. That's great. Awesome. Nice. It's good to have you. Thank you.
Oh, and the draft hasn't been completed yet, correct? Will that be sent out once it is drafted?
Yeah, good question. We do have the old draft that we have from before, but we're still processing what we're going to do. Right now, it's all about effective communication with the community, feeling the, pulse in the room and getting a vision, and then going back and seeing, are there parts we want to keep, parts we want to throw out, do we want to add new, take away, whatever we're going to do, but we're going to do it with the community in the discussion. We are not doing this behind closed doors. We want everybody to see what we're doing as we're going through this process before we take it to the licensure.
Good, because those of us have seen the prior draft. I realized that it was behind closed doors before, and then it was just kind of thrown in our faces. And it was pretty upsetting to a lot of people. And honestly, I don't have a college degree myself. I am RAD certified, but with that first draft, you were not required a BA for a bachelor's, you must have a bachelor's for your RAD certification, whether you are certified or not. So would that follow the same rule for licensure? So many people are upset about that. And I know that I'm not the only one. Because other people say, oh, I have a degree, but I don't have a certification. Okay, well, I can go ahead and work. But I am certified and I have to maintain my certificate while getting continuing education units and other things. So I just want to kind of throw all of those things out there for you.
Okay.
I'm trying.
All right, next person. Okay, so I also wanted to follow up with Kat. Hi, Kat, by the way. I wanted to follow up with Kat's comments. I was involved in the licensure discussion with the process for with the previous team. There are actually 4 drafts or 4 categories on the draft. The first one was clarifying what certification is. The second one was non-certified interpreters who may have had a degree or no degree and will, they would be qualified they would be qualified interpreter, but they had regulations that they had to follow in order to get the licensure. We also had the temporary licensure for recent graduates for them to get into the field of interpreting and if that was possible. And then we had a section for DIs. We wanted to make sure we were including DIs because whether they have a degree or not, they may or may not fit into the other categories. And so it was different deals, but the same regulations, different ways to get that licensure, but the same regulations. And so we were trying to broaden how we could have representation in licensure on the board. And, the state office already was running a licensure fee. They were doing the fees and all of that. They were keeping all of that. Finally, the rough draft was reviewed by a lawyer through DA, Disability Rights of Tennessee, and well, that's who they were in the past. And so the language in there is accurate and compliant with bill law language. So I just wanted to let you guys know about that. Okay, who's next? Just make sure to turn your video on.
All right, hello everyone. I just want to say congratulations on hosting this meeting. I just wanted to throw out there that this is a really important discussion. I live in a rural area in Tennessee, and I have an older daughter who is also deaf, and she is homeschooled, or excuse me, she was homeschooled, and then we did put her into a mainstream school, again, out in this rural area that we live in. And it was interesting because we had asked for an interpreter, requested an interpreter, but the interpreter that was given to my daughter was not certified. I then learned that the interpreter who was provided for my daughter was a full-time bus driver, which was really interesting. So we had a discussion so this is a really important discussion to have to make sure that equal access is provided for the rural community as well. So we just want to make sure that we protect the deafblind, and hard of hearing individuals, students, and anybody who are out in the rural community. So I want to make sure that that is discussed in the interpreter licensure meetings, just emphasizing on that rural community.
Good. Okay, next. Make sure to turn your video on. There it is. Okay. So I had a question for Craig. That was a great explanation about how the process goes for the bill. My concern is, well, I mean, politics aside, my concern here is the state is primarily Republican. So how are we going to be able to successfully to get both parties into consideration when we're talking about such an important topic to make sure this is a successful program? Thank you. I see Craig's hand is up again. I think mine's spotlighting him.
John, good question. So what I had learned is that if a bill does not pass, it does not cost the state any money at all. Typically, one or two legislators will support the bill for it to pass, and then the bill would be set up into a law. And that would not cost the state any money. So there would be no reason for any party to have any kind of conflict. So obviously, we hope that they're just considering human services and supporting all and inclusion for all. The consumers who can hear versus the consumers who cannot. We want to make sure that they are all encompassing in this law for the state.
Okay, next person, please. Oh, I got that fast. Wow. So obviously the question I have, you guys are talking about law, licensure. What are we talking about here? Because licensure is not required by having a law, correct? Yeah.
Good question. So there are multiple tracks, which we are not sure where Tennessee is going at this point. So we are not sure what we're aiming for. If we were to have a board that runs it, we would have to consider where that is housed, if that is state or where we would place that, who would pay for that, where the money would come from, and how that works. So that is a really complicated conversation that we have not arrived at yet. The other track would be counsel for the deaf or hard of hearing or something else, but we have not considered those costs yet. So we're not sure if it is something that would become a law or not. And so that is a good discussion to bring up. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And we'll move on to the next person.
Hi, I'm sorry, it's me again. So remember that the state of Tennessee already has an office where they teach, where they have a licensure for K through 12, and that is ran and supervised. Same category for doctors, nail salons, other departments that require licensure. So if this passes, the licensure and a licensure board is set up, it would be placed under that already existing. Let me get the spelling of that again. Okay, can't see this. Okay, anyways, it'll be under that same department. So they already have an office that is established that is there. So it will not cost anything to house this board under that as well. The only thing would be the fee for payments of taking care of the licensure once it's created and keeping it implemented.
Thank you, Craig. We'll move on to the next person. All right, hello. My name is Leonard Granda. I am a deaf male. I previously lived in Pennsylvania, and the law there that was required to follow was regulated by a jury. And so, if I remember correctly, it was not a licensure for interpreting if you did not have a licensure interpreting in Pennsylvania, you were fined because you broke a law, as well as they had you also had to follow the RAD Code of Professional Conduct to make sure that you are applying ethics, and you could complain if interpreters were not following those, because they would need to have consequences if they were not following. So that we need to figure out who would we report those complaints to. Would we fine them? Would we send that complaint over to RAD, or what would we do with those complaints? So we need to have some kind of regulations in place for that, and to figure out what to do with consequences for interpreters. So that is just a suggestion that I have. And I think a law would be good, because that would really mandate, and we would have a board committee for the licensure, and that would have everything included and be regulated appropriately. So who should be involved on and overseeing that board is something that we also need to consider as well.
Next person. Go ahead, Nikita. Hello, my name is Nikita. I'm an educational interpreter and I'm parked. I'm not driving, just for clarification. However, I work as a full-time educational interpreter and I want certification or licensure, whatever is decided upon. I know that many interpreters come to my school and some are not qualified to be interpreting for my students, that community interpreters that are not qualified to be working for my, or interpreting for my students. And I am concerned about longtime subs that will come in and discriminate against or not work out as well for that. So that is my concern. So I'm really hopeful that as this process goes on, that we can work together with the community to provide subs that are a good match for the students that we have, whether it be a DI or a hearing interpreter, both. It's just so important that we have the skill set if you are supporting the school districts as well. Thank you. That is all.
Thank you.
Are there any more concerns, questions, comments out there? Okay, go ahead and turn your camera on. I told you I have a laundry list here, so I want to get my bid in while I can. So I'm assuming this will include stuff for DIs as well. I know we don't have many, but there are more and more deaf individuals that are wanting to pursue becoming a deaf interpreter because RID doesn't have a CDI process at this time. So needing an interpreter that is deaf, in parallel, the hearing interpreter, hearing person, who is not yet certified would have a provisional. Will that be the same for a DI? Will they have a provisional in order to interpret, or how will that be set up? For people who live like out in the country in rural areas, one positive, COVID did provide access for deaf individuals in those areas, where they are able to attend workshops and trainings and things virtually because everyone had to switch over to a virtual platform because it was COVID. So that was one positive that I saw from that, but I'm thinking more of people who may live close to Memphis now. As of this time, I live close to Memphis now. And there are many interpreters there that do border with Tennessee, Arkansas, and the other states that border Tennessee, and they don't have certification, and there's not a lot of trainings that are provided in that area, and there's not many things for them, and they are very skilled. They are very good interpreters, but they just don't have the opportunity. So what are we going to do with them? Or what do we do for the people who live north, who border up against Tennessee, Kentucky, or Chattanooga, you know, down in that area. So there's just not a lot provided for those interpreters in those areas. And that's also a concern for me because some of them are really good interpreters. And so, and they don't have the capabilities to have access provided for them. So I'm hopeful that a provisional is going to be set up, and then also for VRI as well. I just want to make sure they're considering what we're going to do in regards to VRI. So I'm hoping there's some kind of a plan or a requirement. You know, I'm just trying to be transparent for all interpreters who are working, who are, we're including all of the interpreters all over Tennessee. In going through the whole gamut in this process to try to make sure that we have stuff for everyone, deaf included, obviously, but those who are not yet working interpreters as well, DI or hearing, either way. So I think, some feedback is very valuable there. And I had no idea this was happening until I received an email. So, I mean, this has been going on since July, and I had no idea that this committee was even established. So, anyway, just, the word is not spreading to everyone. I'm trying to spread it, and I trust that now. Like I've sent it everywhere, but I haven't heard anything until now. So, that's a little concerning. Chrissy says your feedback is very helpful to us. We are putting that down, and we will figure out what to do next, because these are very valid and important concerns.
Pat, I know that this is a long list, but you bring up great points all the way through. So I think that all of this is valuable information to bring up. And so, it's important that all of us are included and that anyone who can interpret, for example, if they're not certified or if they are a deaf interpreter, they will have some kind of criteria that will be required first before they would apply for the licensure. And so they would fill out an application. They would take a 20 hours of continuing education, whatever the board of licensure actually decides that is a requirement, a minimum requirement. Maybe it's a letter of recommendation of their skill sets, maybe whatever it may be. And then those bordering states would follow that same suit. So, for example, Kentucky allows interpreters from bordering states to come over. So in Tennessee, interpreters from Tennessee can go into Kentucky, even though the state requires a license. So Kentucky requires, I think it's a specific number of hours a year or per month, depending on their regulations that they have set. And so it's not excluding those interpreters, because Kentucky knows that they have bordering states and other states that are nearby. Yeah, okay, I think that's it.
Okay. So I just wanted to quickly make a comment about something that was mentioned about the CICD or CDI-DI comment. During the notes, I saw that people were mentioning about the CDI-DI, and I think it's interesting because I'm one of the very few people who practice 40 hours for the certification for becoming an interpreter here in Knoxville, but then there's very minimal stuff to do. So like for the licensure, we want to discuss stuff about the DI, CDI, but then they're not always being used. So maybe we need to change the development process of using DIs and CDIs and what the expectations are for them, because they're not being put to work yet. I encourage interpreters or you all to start considering that process, while we're talking about developing a licensure, but also start developing the idea of using a DI, CDI. And before I close, I want to thank all of you for rolling up your sleeves and digging into this. Thank you so much for that.
So I just wanted to explain one situation that happened in Pennsylvania. So my wife and I, we both have doctorate's degrees and we teach in interpreting training programs. So we had gone to a training. It was a 40-hour training, and we had passed the RAD written portion of the certification requirement. In Pennsylvania, I was still not allowed to work as a deaf interpreter. So I had a provisional certificate, but I was not fully certified because I had not taken the performance portion of that RAD certification because it was on moratorium. So we were stuck. We were not able to work in the state of Pennsylvania, even though interpreters who could hearing interpreters are out there working with that provisional. They might have just passed the written portion of their certification of RID, and then they had a 2-year limit before they could take the performance test. So they were allowed to work during that 2-year time. And that did not feel fair to us. As a deaf interpreter, I'm not able to go out and make money the same way a hearing interpreter, a new hearing interpreter who's still awkward at signing and not great yet, where they're able to have a provisional licensure and certification, but we're not. So we want to make sure that that does not happen here in the state of Tennessee. Deaf interpreters should be treated equally to hearing interpreters, whether they are deaf interpreters or certified deaf interpreters. Either way, we want to make sure that they are treated exactly the same as hearing interpreters.
Great,
Thank you.
Next. So the Jamboard comments, it said, is it better to include everyone, or is it better to have it included in the bill? Either way, even if we barely use a CDI or DI, it is harder to amend the law. If we first get the bill passed and it sets into law, it is hard to then go back and amend that bill and change the law. So that is why we are trying to include as much as possible to allow DIs to have the opportunity to work in all the other criteria. In Kentucky, one of the deaf interpreters, their CDI, they regrettably made a huge mistake. They did not include DIs into their licensure law. And so that shot them in the foot. So they only have, as far as I know, one CDI in the whole state of Kentucky, and that really hurts them. Here, we want to be smart enough to include that into our licensure, even though we may barely use them or not barely use them, it doesn't matter. It's better to include that, to have that in there now and forever. Sorry.
Is there any more comments or questions? We have 10 minutes left in this session, so if there are any more comments or questions, feel free. Doesn't seem like there are. Are you sure? We don't want, you to miss out on your opportunity. I see someone popping up here. I have a quick comment I want to make. So I wanted to see if it's something that we can have the opportunity to join the work group.
I'll look at this later.
So as previously mentioned, the work group has 10 hearing interpreters and 10 deaf and hard of hearing. So we cannot discuss more in depth without your questions and comments and concerns addressed. So that is what we've been doing, going to various areas around the state of Tennessee and asking for your feedback. And that is something that we continue to do. So we record all of our meetings, and that is posted to our the KCD's YouTube channel. And that's able for you all to have the opportunity to follow us and be included in the discussions. Whenever we have various meetings set, we do value your feedback and your perspectives, and we want to be transparent as possible with our communication. And we want to listen to your feedback to make sure that we meet the needs of Tennessee and your wants and anything that you need for the interpreting community. We want to make sure that accessibility is improved upon. And so it is an open discussion that we plan on having continuously. And we can set it up somewhere so that you all have easy access to it and you're able to see it a little bit easier. And Megan, I see you have a comment.
Yeah, for transparency reasons, we do share our information and our posts through KCD, through their Facebook page. We share, in a bunch of different areas. I share myself personally. through my personal page. And so we do record the meetings to YouTube. They're there, they're saved, and we have them for you guys to watch. And then we also welcome you guys
To feel
to,
included,
I'm sorry,
to feel included.
to feel included and be part of this journey. Thank you. So if there are any more questions, we just have a few minutes left.
No more questions, comments? I'm gonna count to three. 3, 2, 1. All right, we will wrap it up. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. We really appreciate all of your feedback. Thank you all so much.